Thanks. Yeah, that was one of the things that actually freaked Clay Clark out because everything I would do for him, he goes, and the best part, like, God has blessed me to understand time. So when you understand time, you can look forward and make some smart decisions. So, which I've done in the past few years. I've made some very wise decisions. Not smart. I've made wise, because in the Bible, there's two things that people are. Many people are smart, but many are not wise. And so wisdom is what we need, not intelligence. And so wisdom is what we're going to talk about, biblical wisdom today in this presentation. But God has shown me or given me that ability to understand, have wisdom. And so from with my family, we've made some very good financial decisions, and He's blessed us. So at this point in time, and also the best thing, I know what's coming, right? So I've prepared for it. So when these blessings come, so it's like blessings upon blessings arrive, all I want is for people to understand that God's in charge. So prepare in His kingdom, not in this worldly kingdom that we're in right now. And there are ways of doing it. It says very clear in Haggai 2:8, the silver and the gold are mine, saith the Lord, right? And so those are one of the things we're going to talk about. But it's critically important that there's so many things going on in this world. But when you read the Bible, remember, God does nothing before first speaking through His servants, the prophets. And so He can't, in the other ways, He can't do anything until He actually speaks through His servants, the prophets. And also it's written within the Bible too. So my point is not that I consider myself a prophet, but I've been called by the prophets an analyst of time. The analyst of time is the word that I've been given. And the point being is that if you understand the times and the seasons that we're in, because it's written very clearly, God is a God of time and a God of seasons. And if you understand the times and the seasons, it sure takes a lot of stress off of your life, because you know what time and you know what season we're in, right, biblically. And then it gives you a very beautiful look into the future as to what is coming and when, because that is critical, the when. Are these things coming?
And it protects you from planting during harvest and looking for your harvest during planting, and everything's off. And it seems like why is God against me? Why are things not working? And it just is simply working against the way that He has set things up. And what's refreshing, and I can't wait to get to the punchline here on today's show. But God has been talking about the time that we're in and the way that His people can be protected from what's going on around them since hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago, and God's not caught off guard by anything happening around us today.
Right. My wife says it best. When you're with the Holy Spirit, the Holy Spirit's with you, you're going with the wind, not against it.
Yes. That's exactly right.
Everything just kind of works out. It's just smooth. It's easy. And that's the whole point, is to go with the wind.
I love it. I love it. Well, we're excited. Let's jump into, I've heard you say before, we're in Revelations. And so where are we and what does that look like?
Well, to start off is, the big picture of time. We can go through the slide deck, but I think let's just start at page 1. So we are at, whether viewers want to believe or not, but in time they will come to realize that this is the truth, okay? We're about to see the third seal of Revelation open, which means that the first and second are already open. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But basically the year 2020, as the year 2020 began, okay, you have to understand, ask yourself, is the world the same? Because since Corona, is the world the same, right? And it's written very clearly, when the line of Judah opens the first seal, allows it to be open, right? The world will never be the same. And so that's the bottom line. And it's not, and people say, oh, but we're not, they interpret that as understanding that's in the last 7 years. No, there's nothing written in the Bible that says the seals can't open before the last 7 years. So we're not at the last 7 years yet. Okay. We're not in in the Great Tribulation yet. We're heading into it. We're heading towards it, but we're not there. Okay. So as 2020 started, the world changed forever. Period. You can argue with me all day, but in essence, the world changed forever. Okay. And then once the coronavirus is, so that was seal 1, seal 2, and there's in the slide deck, you'll see that in the lower part of the slide deck, we're not going to cover it today, but basically it talks about, why that was corona and why it's seal 1. And seal 2 was rather fascinating. Seal 2 opened on Pentecost of 2020, so May 31st. So Pentecost is when, the Holy Spirit comes down and in times of, that was actually the third Pentecost as well too. The first one was the time of Moses at Sinai. Second Pentecost was for the 12 apostles. And then so we just witnessed the third Pentecost, and so that's when the Holy Spirit comes to earth, and basically that was the birth of this is cool. That was not only was it Pentecost, not only was it the second seal opening, because that's when all the riots broke out against the world, because the second seal is what peace taken from the earth. And guess what? Ever since that seal opened, right, you have wars, rumors of wars, riots here, riots there, riots all over the world. We're having riots, everything breaking out because that's peace taken from the earth, red seal, second seal, okay? But as cool as, and not cool, but as incredible as that seal when it opened, right, what that also brings is a massive, what that brought, this is really important, the birth of the latter rain, as written in Haggai 2:9. So that was the birth of the latter rain, which it states the latter rain will be greater than the former rain.
Interesting.
And so that's why, and it says, in the time of Jesus, right, when Jesus died and he rose to heaven, and all the apostles had the power, right, of the Holy Spirit, they could bring people back to life, like, giving people sight. They were doing incredible things. But what did God say? The latter rain will be greater.
Greater things than I did.
Will be great. However, this is the challenge. So June 6th of this year, we'll talk about that later in the presentation, but June 6th is Pentecost. June 6th will be 2 years. So from a timing standpoint, the latter rain is only 2 years old. We're just learning to walk. Does that make sense? So that's why we can't do these. We're starting to do things, but the latter rain is only 2 years old. We're just learning to walk. And then that takes us to and 10 days before that event happened, this is really because basically, God created perfection in the Garden of Eden, and then Satan showed up, and then Adam and Eve let him in, and the whole story, right? So the birth of the 6,000-year story, and then leads us into the 1,000-year millennial reign. But that whole story, if you look at the whole story, we are heading back to Eden. So 10 days before the latter rain was birthed and the second seal opened on Pentecost, 10 days before, the Edenville Dam in the township of Hope, Michigan, opened.
This would have been in 2020 Pentecost.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. 10 days before. So that was on May 20th.
Wow.
So none of these things are coincidences, okay? And so these are factual events. You can go to my slide deck. They're all in there. You can click on the links. All of it's in there. It's a latter part of down low in the slide deck. But these are actual events that happen. So this is how amazing God is. There's everything is done with a specific reason, and that's why so many places have specific names. Okay. And so now we are heading into what is the third seal moment. What is the third seal? It's a black horse carrying scales. So black horse represents death. Remember, just a few minutes ago, you're speaking of, sowing seed. You're talking about, harvest, right? Planting seed at the right time. Okay. So for the past year, what's happened in the simplest form, as evil as the politicians and all these people are across the world, that, because remember, people inherently are loving individuals. All they want is peace and a loving family. That's really all people want, right? When you mix governments into it, or principalities, right? Yep. That's where the problems arise. So all these, but there's still people that are in these governments that are placed in these positions, or accept these positions, right? So as evil, as sinister, as horrible as these things are that they do, and these laws they enact, and everything they're stating, right? Remember, God created them. So as horrible as what they're doing, on the other side of it, God loves them. You understand? Yes. So God loves them because they're still his creation. And I think Julie Green said it best, God hates the sin, loves the sinner. right? And so the essence of everything they've done for the past year, God literally, from what they did since last year when they took office, right? God's given them a year to repent. So now they've planted their seeds. So this is really important. They've planted evil seeds. Now they're going to reap those evil seeds as the third seal is opened. On the other side of it, like yourselves, your station, flyover, you've done an incredible job putting everything together, and you've been preaching and teaching and educating, right? So you're planting good seed. And so you're going to be blessed more than you can have ever imagined in the harvest.
She has a big imagination.
Amen.
Yes.
We receive it in the name of Jesus.
So does my wife.
And so when you're
there's always a strong woman behind the man. You know that, right?
and a surprise mother-in-law, typically. Let me ask you this: when you refer to the they, is that strictly, you mean just the, say, U.S. government, what's been kind of, or globally?
Is this global, like the World Economic Forum?
It's
global.
Okay.
It's all, yeah. So that's a good question. When I say they, it's the politicians, it's the world elite, it's the ones with all the money, it's the Soroses, the Gateses, all these ones with the immense amounts of money that they basically, they've sold out. They've literally sold their soul, okay, to be immensely wealthy. And it's like, when did Jesus go in? He went into the wilderness. And what did Satan offer him? Okay, he offered the same thing to Jesus that he did to these people. Bow down to me and I will make you a king on this earth. Why did Satan do that? Because he had the legal right. Adam and Eve allowed him on the earth. Period. Okay, so he's the magician of the airways. Okay, he runs the airwaves. This is what he runs the world, and so he's a master deceiver. He kills, steals, and destroys. But everything about what he does is for control of humanity. Because why? He hates humans. Because we're above him in the pecking order, okay? Lucifer and the angels are under us. We're made in the image of God, so he hates us. And when he found that out, he rebelled against God. And so it's an incredible multi-thousand-year story how this whole thing plays out. But it's incredible to watch it unfold here. So yes, these evil ones are all across the world. It's all about control, and it's a small group of them, right? But but they have a lot of power, right? And their leader is a fallen angel who doesn't die, right? So he's been on this earth for a long time, and he's figured out humans pretty good, okay? So that's why we got suckered into this. And so what have we been suckered into? We've been suckered into giving everything away to basically be slaves and not knowing it. So that was the big lie. For all these generations, they've created money out of thin air, okay? That is the essence of what happened. They created money out of thin air to control humanity, and we didn't know it. Because we actually think a 30-year mortgage is legal. When I say legal in the heavenlies, legal in terms of God, because nothing more than 7 years is allowed. Okay, so the point being is they've created these mortgages to enslave. They're by definition death grips. You go to school, you got a $200,000 student loan, which they know you're never going to repay because you're making $70,000, $80,000 a year. And by the time you pay your overhead and your expenses, that $200,000 is going to sit there for the next 20, 30 years,
and you can't get out of it.
Yep. And I just want to, for listeners, grab a hold of this, because if you hang on to this episode, and maybe it's the domino that leads to other things in your learning, but there is no reason for us to be in an enslaved people. And I say enslaved because we're in a unique era of enslavement, because many people are trapped in a financial, emotional, and mental prison, and you don't even know the bars exist. And so that's a demonic stronghold that we've allowed ourselves to be captive by.
Yes.
Yep. And that's because in the time of Pharaoh in Egypt, right, in Israel, right, they actually had chains, so it was obvious you're in bondage.
Right.
So the evil one, he's a smart foe, right? So he's smart. He's not dumb, right? And so he's had many hundreds of years to think about this. And now, so he now has created a way of enslaving humanity. And like the best form of enslavement is to enslave people, not even have them know it, because they just go, get these 30-year mortgages, student loans, and it's all normal. And so so if you look, I would say 90, who knows what percentage of the population, but huge percentage of the populations have either a credit card, a mortgage, a student loan.
Absolutely.
It'd be hard to find someone that doesn't have one of those three.
Right. Yep.
Okay, and all they do is so now you go to work. It's all about time, right? And so if you have time, because money buys you time, period.
Right.
If you have much money, you have much time, because you can think about what you want to do in your life and plan things. And but if you don't have money, you're constantly going to work just to make enough to pay your bills, and that's what they want, right? They want you just over broke.
Yep. It's true.
That's how they want you.
And if you don't have very much money, what you end up doing is thinking about money a lot of the time. And so even when you are home, you're not really there because you're stressed about that you don't have money.
Yeah,
and we should have the most time of any people that's ever been.
Sure.
If you want to change the temperature in your house, everybody, even if you're poor, you can probably still have a thermostat. You're probably not cutting wood all off season so you can heat your house all winter. You can probably still go to the grocery store and there's food already cleaned and ready for you to eat. So we live with the kind of luxuries that only kings had up until now. Right. We have free time. We have access to book knowledge and information. We have a lot of these kind of resources. So we have the ability for more free time than ever before, but less of it than we've ever had before. People are more stressed out and have no time than ever.
Right, because in the model that they've created, right, it's an inflationary model, so everything keeps going up in value. So not in value, value, and then they keep creating more money. So the pool of money keeps expanding. So, and these are factual statements. It took 100 years to make the first $1 trillion. It's a true statement, okay? And then in the crash of March 2020, so 2 years ago, they printed 7 or 8 trillion in a weekend just to push the stock market back up and repair the damage of the crash of 2020 in March. Okay, and so this goes to show you and how much money they can create, because it's very simple. They're computer models. All they do is they can create more and more money, but that money basically, that's why the prices of homes and everything is skyrocketed, because they've created so much money. They push so much money. It's a pool of money that's been pushed into our economies, and everything that inflates is the price of everything. But everything that, in terms of this, is really important too to think about. Every price, the price of your home, the price of your car, the price of everything is valued in a worthless currency.
Yep.
So the value of everything, this is hard for people to grasp, but the value that you might put on something right now is valued in a money that's soon going to be worthless. When I mean worth less, it doesn't mean go to zero. It means worth less, and then worth less. So over time, it's going to get chopped down several times in this decade, and by the end of this decade, the currency that's in your bank, that's in your pockets, money that people hold, will be worthless, like zero. And the only things left standing will be God's money. So we're heading into an incredible time point, and that takes us to where we are. It's about the money is the root of all evil, but it's the love of it.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with having means, but the church is now, the church loves to tell you, hey, don't have money because it's bad. You understand? Without money, you can't build a church. Period. How do you build a church without money? And so we're heading into a royal wedding, meaning that, we read the Lord's Prayer, thy kingdom come. Do you understand that Christ says he's returning? His kingdom's coming.
Yes.
To earth. Thy kingdom come. And so we, the bride, are to prepare and build his church in preparation for his return. This is how it's written in the Bible. And so how does all of this happen? So we're, in the presentation, again, slide 1, the land will rumble and these evil ones are about to crumble.
Amen.
That's a prophetic word given to me by a friend of mine, Lois, and she's amazing prophet. But the point is just God. There's many prophets now on this earth right now, and so my presentation it's prophetic in terms of timelines that I understand, and the guy's going to explain to me. So I kind of understand his timelines. I have an understanding of that. Then I take prophetic words that I've listened to different prophets. I overlay their words on mine, and I'm like, whoa, it fits beautifully, right? So that's
so
the
cool.
freaky part. That's the cool part. And then I overlay that thirdly with the prophetic word written in the Bible. So it's very hard to go through this presentation and knock it apart, because it's pretty right on in terms of all three of those things lining up nearly perfectly.
And it aligns perfectly in the natural, because we have multiple advisors that are giving us the same things in just in the natural, no other context. This is the direction to go with finances today, and they're just not in a position to be on shows and to speak on these things. But it's from every direction, everything is pointing in the same place. That's what I love about your message.
Thanks. Yeah, and everything we've talked about, this this nice long intro, is kind of a preface into what we're going to talk about. But that is the essence of it: is money is what's caused them to do what they've done, and that's how they did it all with the money.
Yep.
And so God's he knew they would, back to the beginning of the conversation, and he put a plan in for that. And then we're going to watch all this unfold. And that's why, again, I talk about the third seal. If you go to second page, again, the QR code goes on if they can scan that, like a restaurant, you get download the PDF, but you can also just email everybody that slide deck code. So let's go to page 3. So page 3, like we've talked about Pharaoh and Israel. Pharaoh, this is the exact same thing. We had that was in the Exodus. A friend of mine, Julie Green, actually coined it the Great Exodus, which is kind of cool, because that's exactly what I've been seeing. What I see happening here is that was an area of the world, and this is a global event that's about to happen. All I can tell you, no one's going to miss what's about to happen. If you were anywhere near Egypt when the Red Sea parted open, no one missed that. I promise you. And then for generations afterwards, when people talked about the God of Israel, they were scared.
They were afraid.
They knew the power of him.
Yep.
That resonated for generations after that event.
That'll get you a reputation.
Yes,
Definitely.
Start parting seas.
That's it, will. And that's why the glory goes to God.
That's powerful stuff. There's a story about, Jim Rohn talking to Tony Robbins back in the day. And, Tony Robbins is famous for the walking on fire coal and all this stuff. And Jim Rohn told him, he's another author, he goes, hey, that's pretty impressive, but if you want to draw a big crowd, try water. He goes, they'll come from miles around.
True.
Over and over. Yeah. It's amazing. And that is like crazy cool, because that's why when this event's about to happen, it's going to be it's like the Red Sea. It's going to be such a massive, this will be a worldwide event. When I say rumble, the world's going to rumble. There's going to be things popping off all over the world. You won't miss it. Amen. And when it's all said and done, you're going to go, there's only one way this could have happened, is by the hand of God.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And then
come on.
Yeah, then you have 45 return to take his rightful position, but he's not allowed to be there right now, because God has to take down Goliath before 45 can return. So everyone's like, oh, why is he not back yet? Because God, it's a pecking order, it's a sequence, of events that must transpire, and you will in the end, by the end of this year, see exactly how this played out. First, you have to have the fall of the Daniel 2 statue, Babylon. Once Babylon falls, then you're going to have to have a leader on the other side of the Red Sea, and that's where 45 comes into play as president. But it's too early right now, and we're going to talk about how these, and it's amazing how God put this all together, the pieces. But if you go to the next slide, you go to slide 4. This is kind of cool. I just love reading slide 44, which is Isaiah 61, because it is the essence of how this all is going to go down. Okay. And so the last line was not read by Jesus. So Jesus walked in the temple. He read this. He goes, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to bring the good news to the poor. He has sent me to comfort the brokenhearted, and to proclaim that the captives will be released and the prisoners will be freed. And this is what he did not read in the temple: to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance of our God. There's a critical word in there. The word is day, the day of vengeance. So as wild as these things are, we talk about the Red Sea. Israel's, go back to my French, is screwed, pinned up against the Red Sea. And what did God need? One day.
One day.
One day. everything changed.
In an instant.
We're about to see in an instant. So we're about to see that moment in time. Okay. So we're still in April. I'm expecting something to go here in April before the month end, potentially. I believe that's going to happen. We're going to have first strike. Okay. So that's a really powerful prophecy that if your viewers can listen to that. Basically, we're talking about Israel and Pharaoh. And incredibly, which blew my mind, a good friend of mine, Amanda Grace, is on stage with Clay Clark, and we were in Ohio. And then her words blew me away because she actually stated pharaohs. So she said, if the pharaohs of this world want a demonstration of my power, a demonstration they shall receive. First strike comes in April. Why would God have used the word pharaohs if it wasn't about to be a Red Sea event, of an Egypt, Israel type event? So Ecclesiastes is very simple. That which has been will be again. There is nothing new under the sun. So we're about to see another Red Sea moment, Red Sea miracle, a release from bondage. When I walked on stage just the other day with Clay this past week, and everyone's sitting there listening to all these people talk, and I'm like, "Good news, everybody! 400 years ago, Egypt was in bondage. Or Israel was in bondage for 400
years. Yep,
right.
That's right.
And then my next word was the Mayflower. Guess what? Landed 400 years ago.
That is so cool.
Ecclesiastes, okay? And then we're going to talk about the 50-year Jubilee, Leviticus as well, too. So everything's piled in upon layers of 2022, this year being a year the world will never forget.
Amen. So exciting.
So if you go to page 6, so again, all the stories of Daniel, there's numerous stories that I've laid out in the presentation, but the essence of it, you've got Daniel steps from virtually being, no one in the palace to second in command of all of Babylon in 24 hours. Because what did he do? Nebuchadnezzar had this incredibly powerful dream that was freaking him out. He didn't know. He knew it was a powerful dream. He didn't know what it meant. And, he basically told all of the soothsayers, his prophets, in particular, seers, what are you people good for if you can't interpret the dream for me? Right. And Daniel asked to pray on it. He showed up in the morning. Oh, did he blow him away with an interpretation? He basically, it's page 7, Daniel, this is the Daniel 2 prophecy. He basically laid out to Nebuchadnezzar the next 2,500 years. Incredibly, that's as credible as that is. They've all happened so far. We've seen Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome, papacy, United States. Everything has happened so far except the fall of the statue, which is Revelation, which is Daniel 2:34. All that's missing is the last piece. Okay, and for your viewers, what is Babylon? What is Babylon? Like we talked about earlier, it's a control system across the world. These evil ones have enslaved humanity. They've enslaved humanity with money, with finances. And so therefore they can control everybody. And so it's all about control of humanity.
Again, you see there in the bottom of the corner, if you want a closer look at each of these slides, just send a text to 40509, text the word BO, B-O, and then everything that's referenced in this episode will come to you automatically right to your phone.
Bo, there's so much information in each one of these slides as we're looking. There's links on top of links.
This slide here could be a multi-hour training just if you never left this slide.
Yeah. Great information.
But now let's have some fun. Let's get into present time. Let's go to the next slide, slide 8. Okay, so Babylon stands. Babylon stands, the great image as discussed in Daniel 2. It stands today, and that's not only the Statue of Liberty. It's these are statues all over the world. Okay, that represent Babylon. So it's a worship of a statue. Basically, they mock us with their statues, and this is what's going on around the world.
Talk about that a little bit, because even our Statue of Liberty is not the only one.
Well, there's another one in France, from what I understand. There's several of these, and the whole essence of the statue itself was a Muslim woman. This statue, it was initially thought to be a Muslim woman with a phrase, Egypt carrying the light to carrying the light to Asia. You know, so the whole point is the entire world has been deceived to believe, you know, that everything's normal, but in fact, we're about to find out. See, the world's going to have a huge awakening very soon when they come to realize the truth. Because, and this is another thing I said the other day, as of Christmas, is past Christmas, right? As that's the winter solstice. What happens, like on the 25th or 26th of December, right? Every single day is getting lighter. And this is really powerful. What does light do to darkness?
It makes it flee.
That's right, because it exposes the truth. It shows the truth, right? So that's why right now, every single day, you can feel these people, and then you're seeing more and more come out right now, because more truths are coming out, because every day is getting brighter. So we're going to keep accelerating in terms of truths getting revealed into June 21, which is the brightest day, the day with the most light.
Okay.
So it's very wild, because remember, God's a God of time, but he's a God of seasons. And so we're in the season of spring, which is bringing more and more light across the world right now. So it's really all the pieces are playing together right now. And that's why you're seeing more information come out, more laptop information come out, more exposure, just little things. But again, not the whirlwind of information just yet, but the pieces are just kind of starting to pop. And then you're going to get that moment in time where the world just, everything just like.
Are we going to see the rats and the cockroaches? You know, like when the lights are off and they flip the lights on and all the rats are running around and cockroaches, that's what we're getting ready to see?
Well, yeah, you're going to see that, you know, they're going to be throwing up, getting, you know, sick. You're going to see people, you're going to see stuff, because the thing that they've done, you know, we don't know the magnitude of this, but I promise you, when the truth comes out, the things that they have done will make people throw up, will make people sick, what they've done, especially to the children and stuff. And so, you know, people don't understand what's happened. I don't really know all the details, right? I don't know many of the details at all, but I know when the truth comes out, it's going to blow people's minds, and it's going to make people sick to their stomachs what's about to happen.
Later this week, we have on the guy that owned the repair shop that Hunter Biden's laptop was at. He's coming on to share with us. So it's just, that's kind of our job, is to kind of put as many things on the table as possible and expose truth and let people say, oh, I didn't know that. I wish every show was as cheerful as yours with just all good news, because I've seen you do this presentation before. So when we get to the punchline, it's like, yes.
We're going to all be running around the room, giving high fives.
That's what I'm doing right there. And again, last fall, it kind of changed the directory of our focus of what we're doing financially, and it's been unbelievable.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's because it's all good news, but the good news that, you know, that's God is the good news. But again, it's the awakening that's coming, right? And so these people are pushing an agenda, which Clay talks about regularly on his show. You know, it's a great reset. That's their plan, right? And so we're going to find out that that's going to blow up in their face here. So if you go to the next slide, this is the harlot. So Babylon the Great is nothing but it's the same thing. So Babylon, as described to Nebuchadnezzar, Daniel 2, is no different than the harlot. It's the same thing. It's the same prophecy. So the harlot is the harlot itself. This is the great harlot with whom the kings of the earth have committed sexual immoralities and have become drunk. So this is what's gone on around the world. And so this is the event where the Babylon statue, or the harlot, is about to fall. If you go to the next slide, this is really important here, slide 10, because slide 10 basically talks about how this is all played out. They've done it through the financial system. The harlot now rides the beast. Okay, so I saw a woman, a harlot, sitting on a scarlet beast that was full of blasphemous names, and it had 7 heads and 10 horns. The 7 heads are the 7 mountains, the hills of which the woman is seated. When she says she's seating it, she's riding it. She's in control. So when you ride on a horse, you control the horse, right? So the harlot is riding this beast, and the beast basically had 7 heads. And what are the 7 heads? Lance Walnut does a great job of talking about it, but basically it's the church, it's the family, it's the government, the education system, the entertainment, and the media. All ultimately, they grabbed a hold of all of those hills with the financial system by creating money. So that is the 7 hills that are being ridden by the harlot right now. And so we're about to see an event in time here very soon, because we're seeing very big things going on right now with Russia and China and a lot of things. And so God's going to use things for his purpose. So as much as somebody may not like China or may not like what Russia's doing right now, which is really, you're going to find out that actually Russia's doing something it's completely opposite of what we're being told. But the point being is that all of these things God's going to use for his purpose. So if we scroll over to page 13, And so this is what's about to happen. So if you look at the financial system is what, they're controlling it all. And anytime you challenge the US dollar supremacy, it's an act of war. Period. You go back in history, you challenge the supremacy, you buy oil in anything but the US dollar, it's an act of war. And we're going to talk about that, what happened particularly with Russia on the August 24th. If you've listened to my presentations, I've talked about August 24th being a very powerful time. August 24th, and also what happened just this past April. So August 24th was a tipping point. That's where the time point when Russia signed a military contract with Saudi Arabia of last year. But they didn't need it. Saudi Arabia didn't need it because they had one with the U.S., but obviously they reneged on that contract. And now, just this past 2 days ago, on April 24th, if you've watched my presentation in the past, I talked about April 24th. Do you realize that on April 24th, 2 days ago, they shot 2 missiles or something at Russia and blew up 2 huge oil refineries in Russia? So they just attacked Russia within its borders. Why? Because Russia was selling oil in the ruble, which Putin attached to the gold. So that was so we're about to see crazy about to go off here. So whatever's happening in the world, it's going to get more crazy very soon here as we head into May and then into the middle of May. So big things are coming. So this is the point in time where literally Egypt is coming at Israel, and Israel is pinned, screwed. They're sitting up against that Red Sea right now. And so it's going to get worse yet, because this is the final attack that's about to happen here coming as we head into May. So big events. So basically, this is Revelation. What's about to happen is Revelation 17:17. For God has put it into their hearts, and there are the BRICS nations. So Russia, China, India, they're going to come together as one.
Well, and the moves that are being made by this current administration here in the U.S., they're forcing that. They're forcing them into each other's arms.
Yes, so that's what's about to happen. So the BRICS nations are going to come up against the global elite, and they're going to take down the dollar. And then very quickly, you're going to have maybe a 30% quick, sharp drop on the U.S. dollar. But the drop is going to do one specific thing. That moment in time is going to do one thing to the dollar, and that's take away its faith and confidence. So that will take away its world reserve status. And so the people of the world are going to now want other things to be paid with rather than the U.S. dollar. And that's how hyperinflation, sets into place. If you go on the next slide, 14, you'll see hyperinflation, and by simplest definition, is just the price of important things like food or goods that you want. It doubles in price in a matter of days, sometimes hours. But so that's what hyperinflation is. So these things are coming to pass. Here we're going to see large, spikes in prices on some things, just because this is how God laid it all out. Yeah. But the bad things that are about to happen are going to be immensely different with the good things that are about to happen. And the good things are going to so outweigh the bad things that you won't even care, because the blessings will be so big.
That's great. Sense. Yes.
Yeah, and it is a confidence thing. The U.S. looks like, fantastic. Like, if you've ever been around a family that maybe say the really well-off high rollers, big shots, the husband loses his job but doesn't even tell the wife. He just kind of goes away every day, and they keep up the facade like things are great, putting everything on the credit card. They're still going on vacations, going to fancy dinners. The kids don't know, the neighbors don't know, everybody. You would easily give that guy some credit if he says, hey, I can't pay for that till Saturday. Hey, no problem, because he's a big shot. He's keeping up all of the heirs. In the meantime, all of a sudden in one day, the car's repossessed and this is gone and everything unravels because for the last year, he's put everything on a credit card. And that seems like how we are as a country right now. Everything looks like it's normal when you go out, the stores, everything, but it's all,
it can't be.
It's all fake. It's all fake. We've printed so much money in the last year and a half. It's all pretend. I might as well be writing you something on a yellow pad. Here, Bo, here's a yellow pad. Here, I'm good for it. And you would take it if you knew I was rich, but if you knew I was living on credit cards, you probably wouldn't take that IOU.
Well, before any country or any nation falls, the last thing that happens is hyperinflation of the money. Okay, so on that slide you're looking at right there, there's 14 or something examples of different nations that have all fallen. And the last thing that happened was monetary hyperinflation. Okay. So this is about to happen here to the United States, where we're going to have hyperinflation. But every time that happened historically, anybody that held precious metals, they weren't affected. Anybody that prepared wasn't affected. So precious metals, by definition, are nothing but an insurance policy against the government, against the nation. That's what it is. It's an insurance policy. And so if you go to the next slide, slide 15, this is the thing we've been talking about, third seal of Revelation. So we get a black horse with scales, right? The rider holding scales. So we talked about, they've planted evil seeds, and now they're going to reap what they have sown. So the black horse is for them, the death. So expect many deaths, whatever that means, I don't know. But expect that to play out. And the prophetic word is they first lose everything. So they lose all their finances. So that's the scales, right? So the scales tip against them. So all the monies that they've accumulated, they lose, and then they die. So that is what the black horse represents. From a biblical standpoint, that's the Proverbs 13:22. The wealth of the sinner is stored up for the righteous. That doesn't mean everybody. It means the righteous. So who are the righteous ones? Well, the ones that prepared, the ones that planted good seeds. So that's Proverbs 13:22. If we go to the next slide, not to spend a lot of time on this, but that just shows you all the eclipses. This is God's masterpiece in the heavens.
You said earlier, I'm sorry, Bill, I just want to clarify. You said earlier, good seeds. Is that only financial, only people that have made good decisions with buying gold and silver, or are these good seeds with just things that they have done, for the kingdom?
Great question. It's the second one. It's planted good seeds with preparing, financially, that have been speaking the word of Christ, trying to get the word out of what's coming, so that people prepare and speaking truths, and so not being in the world, not being of the world, but in the world, So it's all of those things. So it's people don't need to be, if they don't have the means to be prepared financially, but as long as their heart is good and they're going in the right direction and they love Christ, that's good seeds, right? So it's all a matter of doing the right thing for the kingdom of Christ.
Good.
For the coming kingdom.
I think that's really important that people grasp a hold of that, because Robin Bullock talks about that a lot, seeds that are planted and the harvest that's coming. And I mean, that is so good. Thank you.
Because there's constant planting going on. There's planting in the,
constant
planting a garden.
And the blessings that come, there are going to be so many, right? So like with the miracle of the wine, right? The first miracle, there was more than enough, right? So when the blessings arrive, there's going to be more. So the ones that don't have the means today, the goal is to build God's church and bring the people in, build it and they will come.
Yep.
So people they'll have everything they need, just because God provided more than enough. And, so there'll be gatherings of people getting together. We'll be living in communities in the future, and everyone will be just fine.
I like Malachi, the storehouse is full.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely not a season, though, for like, hey, I got a little bit extra. I got an extra $200 a month. I could afford a $200 a month jet ski payment.
No.
Or something. This is not that season for acquisition and for, frivolity. It is definitely a season of sowing.
Yeah, because it's not only that, it's beyond the season of sowing. We're like in harvest now. So we may not see it yet, but it's just literally that one day could be tomorrow. And I'm telling you, it's by the time June hits, and by the end of the summer, by the longest day of the year, will be like the 21st of June. I'm telling you, any time between now and into the June, wow, what's coming is going to be truly historic in terms of events that are coming together. So we're really at an important, critical time point, because we're coming into what's called a birth of a new era. So as the best way I can describe, what is a new era? Okay, so Jesus was on the earth. Well, before that, you had the 4,000 years of the Jews. Then Jesus shows up, and what happened? The clock changed from BC to AD. Okay, that's an era. You see how powerful that moment in time is? Okay, we're stepping into a new era. Whatever is coming is going to be so big that the world will never forget what just happened.
That's good.
That's a great way to frame that.
It's because if you look at my timelines down later in the presentation, right, we're 4,000 years of the Jews, 2,000 years of the Gentiles, 1,000-year millennial reign. It's a 421, 7,000 year 421 cycle. So that's the big picture of God's time, not my time, his time. So we're in the tail end of the last 2,000 years. And that was confirmed. You mentioned Robin Bullock. There's a video that I did, I think maybe 2 months ago on my YouTube channel, and talked specifically about timelines. And I did when I was on Elijah's stream, I did a presentation. I talked about the timelines and the return of when the earliest time point could be. Not that that day's coming or the year he's coming, but the earliest time but possible. And then Robin Bullock comes on like 2 months later, or maybe a month ago or something. And so I think I did this in November, and then Robin Bullock showed up in January, February, and he came on completely. God showed him a timeline and how to count months. I don't know if you saw that video, and he came up with the exact same calculation that I gave on the Elijah stream.
That is so interesting. We actually had Robin on our show, and he rolled that out. So if you haven't seen that, we'll also put that in the notes, because you're exactly right, and those go together hand in hand. It's pretty awesome to see that.
Pretty big Robin Bullock fans here. You know, we got the action figure, we got the lunch pail, the pajamas, the whole Robin Bullock set.
He's a wonderful man.
He's the best.
Yeah, yes, he is. Yep, absolutely. You know,
it's funny. Stacey will interrupt us at dinner. We're saying something. Well, I don't know if you knew this, but Robin Bullock on Tuesday said this, this, and this. You know, it's like whatever we're talking about, it could be sports, and Robin Bullock said this.
Yeah, see? Good. Gotta listen to the wife.
That's right. Thanks, Bo.
Absolutely.
He's also just incredibly cool, so
yeah,
that helps.
Cool. Yep. Yeah, no, exactly. That's what God did. You know, it's the spirit of Elijah. God has anointed certain people, across this world, and to speak the truth, speak His truth, and it's really fun to see some of these people who are complete. You know, I call them prophets, or they're prophets, but I call them rock stars. You know, because a couple of them speak. Man, it's like amazing to listen to these people.
It is.
So Robin is like amazing to listen to.
Yep.
Kent Christmas, same.
Kent Christmas, I was thinking of too.
Definitely.
Johnny Enlow.
Yeah. It's incredible. It's
is.
So very, very, very powerful words spoken with clarity and precision, because God is a precise God. So and that's why the calculations are always, accurate and precise, and how it all plays out. So it's really, really wild to watch how this is all coming together. If you want to so go back to the presentation, slide 16. It's just those eclipses kind of are mind-boggling, the perfection and how it all pointed to May 26th with the center of end times in the heavenlies. So the next slide is actually pretty powerful, because we're going to talk about where we are in the birthing process here of this new era. But basically, God showed me a protractor, and He said, basically, count time using a protractor with each angle being a day. So we're coming to, the May 26th in the green box was that center of end times from the prior slide. So we're now in the last month before birth. I want to repeat that. We're in the last month before birth of this new era here on Earth. So something's about to happen here as we head into May, then it, max into June. But April 24th, which just was 2 days ago, and we talked about that, but basically on that specific day, Russia was hit, with two explosions on their oil plants for basically selling oil in non-US dollar format. Right. And that was an act of war. And I've been talking about how it's going to be an act of war because of what they did. And I talked about that actually up here in August 24th of last year. And that was tipping point, because that was the start of the conflict of the oil issues. And because it was 50 years that Nixon took us off the gold standard, that was the fall of Kabul, and that was August 15th, and to the precise day Kabul fell. So all these things are very powerful, but the point is, it's just so August
down
15th,
to the day.
To the day, yeah. Kabul fell on August 15th to the day, and then you have the tipping point August 24th, and that was when Saudi signs a military contract with Russia. Well, they had one with the United States, so they didn't need a second one. Obviously, they were scared because Kabul was just abandoned. So they're like, well, they're going to do that to us next, right? Yep. And then you have the Rosh Hashanah hit, and that was the Evergrande bond debacle, which is going to now lead to very large financial events that are going to trigger this year. So the stock market's starting to collapse, starting to fall, and it's as ugly as it is now. You haven't seen anything yet. It's going to get a lot worse here very, very soon. We're going to have the stock market's going to plunge. and then that's going to cause historic. What's coming is Proverbs 13:22. The wealth of the sinner is stored up for the righteous. So the stock market crash that's coming is a collapse of their system. I'm going to repeat that. It's a collapse of their system. So massive crash going to be their takedown of them. So God's going to use it against them. And then right after that will be the birth of God's financial system, right? Of God's era. Because when the new era is birthed, so is his money.
Man.
And his money is what? Gold and silver?
Correct. The silver and the gold are mine, saith the Lord. Haggai 2:8. So you can say it both ways. I've said this on Elijah streams, and every interview I do, I say, the new era, when the new era is birthed, so is God's money, gold and silver. Gold, silver, the backwards of that is gold and silver is birthed with the birth of God's kingdom. Okay? When I say birth, it basically means it's going to break away from generations of price control. So the people that are controlling the price of gold and silver are going to lose control. So either they will not be there, they won't have the ability to be there to do it. But regardless, the controls they have, the ones that are controlling the financial system, are going to lose control, and God is going to cause his gold, his money, gold and silver, to skyrocket in price. To do why? To allow his church to prosper, to be blessed. Okay? Because if you're blessed, you can be a blessing to those around you, like you spoke about earlier, right? You need financial means. So those that don't have the financial means, those that do, will be able to take care of those around them that need it. Okay? So the wealth of the sinner start for the righteous that prepared will be blessed to bless those around them.
And the wise men didn't travel across the country to bring baby Jesus a bunch of US dollars. And there's nothing in heaven about the streets being paved in fiat currency. I can't believe God's setting up his kingdom on a fiat currency.
Well, what is Satan? He's a copycat, right? So why was this the movie The Yellow Brick Road, right? Satan's been to heaven, so he's seen it, right? So that's why he created the movie Yellow Brick Road, because he saw in heaven the roads are paved with gold. So it's nothing. All you're seeing is basically what he was showing you, what he saw in heaven. So that's why he created the movie.
Yep,
makes sense. Yep.
So it's all copycat. So slide, so you got a slide 18. This year is going to bring a market crash. I posted this actually, I think last year. It's my slide from late last year, or as of January, and basically saying at 0.4. So at 0.4, we're looking, that's a top there. So now we're looking at crash. So anywhere from a 47 to a 86% stock market plunge this year. And it's a war cycle every 40 years. So 1942, 1982, and then you got 2022 this year as well too. So we'll see what the events are. But the point being is all of these monies that that you have value in the stock market. Again, they're you have to ask yourself, what kind of value is it if they can create money out of thin air and push it back into the stock market, and then. So I don't know. Do you feel good about that? If you do, then just don't do anything. I'm not giving people financial advice. I'm just telling you what I see coming, what I've done. I believe, that what I'm speaking are truths. And I think a lot of it can be confirmed by what a lot of the prophets have spoken as well. Also, so next slide would be slide 19. It's like Jesus walks into the temple, in a heartbeat, gets pissed, and that's the year of the Lord's favor, the day of his vengeance, right? He's at a point now where he's had enough, and he's going to flip the tables on them. And this is like the planting of the seed, right? Now they're about to reap what they have sown. Page 20 takes us to the Jubilee. Okay, so this is Leviticus. So this is a little different. It says, "And you shall consecrate the 50th year and proclaim liberty throughout the land and to all of its inhabitants." Okay, not just the righteous, all of its inhabitants. So this is different, which means that when we talked about being enslaved, so they've enslaved us with mortgages and debt, student loans for all these. So people, they're enslaved, not knowing that they're enslaved. That's the best form of enslavement, like we've talked about. But what happened in Egypt and Pharaoh and Israel, right? And so when they crossed the Red Sea, they got away from Pharaoh, and Pharaoh's dead, and they're no longer in bondage. So this is what's about to happen. It's a 400-year cycle and a 50-year cycle. The 400 years represents what happened to Egypt and Israel. Okay, that's the 400-year cycle. That which has been will be again. The 50-year cycle talks about where we are right now, and that's directly related to the next two slides. So abortion, So Roe v. Wade was argued before the Supreme Court on December 13th of 71. So this is we are in the 50-year jubilee of abortion. God, of all the things that we could have done to disappoint God, to hurt God, to have him sad, seriously sad for what we did, we allowed abortion in this country. So he turned his back on us for 50 years. He turned his back on us when we allowed Roe v. Wade to be a thing here in the United States. Once he turned his back on us, guess what the harlot did? She got to ride the beast. So in 50 years, they've created enough money to control all 7 hills, as we talked about in earlier slides. So now the harlot controls the beast, and that's also in 71, slide 22. That's when Nixon took us off the gold standard. It's been 50 years. So Nixon takes us off the gold standard. Abortion is enacted, and next thing you know, God turns his back on us, and now we are at a point where at 50 years, so 50-year mark takes us to slide 23, and we get to the wealth transfer, and so God's about to, based on Leviticus, thou shalt consecrate the 50th year and proclaim liberty throughout the land and to all of its inhabitants. So the liberty is going to come with a flipping of the financial system, the black horse with the scales, the wealth transfer, Proverbs 13:22. They're all the same thing. The fall of the harlot, the fall of the Daniel statue. All of these prophecies are talking about the same event that's about to happen here on this earth. So we are at that point in time, and in terms of next slide, so we talk about sowing seeds. God's a multiplier. So as much as hyperinflation is going to come into play, damages first off are immediately 7-fold. So expect 7-fold multiplication. This year probably of gold and silver, and then followed by that, we're at how this all plays out will be interesting to see. But you're looking at damages, blessings. 30, 60, 100-fold. We're going to see that's not my word. That's using Matthew 13, applying those numbers to gold and silver. Okay, so expect incredible things to happen, especially with silver. Page 25, second seal. We've talked about that already, but it's basically peace taken from the earth. So we're dealing with that right now with the Russia issue. So then next slide, 27. So this is key. So now we're talking about birth. Okay, so birth. We're stepping into a huge point in time where the world shifts, everything changes. The world as you know it right now will never be the same, because when the truths come out and the light shines on the truth, it's going to blow people's mind of what's been hidden in the darkness. Yep. Okay, and that point in time will be the birth. The birth. And so how and when could this potentially be? You have to look at, so I was looking at like the last month, right? We said we're in the last month here of childbirth, because Rosh Hashanah, September 6th, is God's New Year. Not the Jewish New Year, not our New Year. It's God's New Year, who the Jews happen to hold his calendar. Our New Year's January 1. God's New Year, September 6th, or more precisely, it's Rosh Hashanah. So if you run 9 months, do the calculations, that takes you to May. Okay, so anywhere from May 5 to June 6, because it's a 9-month window.
Man.
My mother might have a delivery date, but that doesn't mean that the delivery is on that date, as you know, if you have children, right? The actual delivery can be anywhere around then. So it could be early, could be later. So again, this is why God specifically stated in the Bible, in the thing in Matthew, 3 times is stated, no one knows the day or the hour. I'm telling you, I've stated this so many times, it's precision speech. No one knows the day or the hour. We know I'm telling you, it's this year. It's also been prophesied through numerous prophets. So it is this year, but we don't know the day or the hour. I'm giving you a window of time based on birth. So now we can narrow it down to something. I'm calculating time.
Can I clarify the Jubilee as well? So Jubilee, that was a time of forgiveness of debts and all of that. Is that right? And
exactly.
You're saying that actually would have occurred in September of 2021. Is that right?
No. So the 50th year started on Rosh Hashanah.
Okay.
So if you look at the very top, the 50th Jubilee began on Rosh Hashanah, September 6th of 2021.
Okay.
and the Jubilee year ends in September of 2022.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it's still 12 months, 12 apostles, 12 months, right? So we've got 12 months of the year. However, the 9th month, if we're talking birth, would be in May into June.
Okay.
So so that's the birth, and then we're still, but then the whole year of Jubilee does not end until September.
Okay. Good. I just wanted to make sure I was following you there.
Yeah, that's the 50th year. So next slide. So do expect some. I got a word. I believe this. God's the prophetic word that I believe I heard was study Lazarus. And so Lazarus was dead in the tomb for 4 days, and that was intentional. God left him there not for 1 day, not for 3 days, but for 4 days he was in the tomb. And why did he do that? Why was Lazarus in the tomb for 4 days? It says very, very clearly, did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God? So after this event and Lazarus came back to life, Lazarus rose, the world realized Jesus is God. So guess who got the glory?
God.
Jesus.
Yep.
God got the glory, right? So this is why I'm trying to say 45 cannot return until God
Gets the glory.
first gets the glory.
That makes
sense.
Yes. Isn't that amazing?
Oh, that's so good.
Yes, these are the pieces that I get. And I'm like, so to me, things I understand. To whatever, I guess he's anointed me or blessed me to understand the times. But when I explain it, you can't argue that doesn't make sense.
Right.
It makes perfect sense, right? So you'd have the birth somewhere around the 9th month or in the 9th month, right? And the birth is going to bring the glory. The glory is going to bring chaos to the world. But the glory, glory is a funny word, right? Because for some people it's glory, for the other side it's chaos, right?
Right.
And a nightmare. It's the worst thing they could ever imagine, right? Because when the glory arrives, it's going to be immense glory, celebration, and chaos and horrendous things to the other side, and the worst day of their life on the other side of the fence, right? So it's a double-edged sword.
Yep.
But understand that the glory first arrives. Really important. The glory arrives like in Lazarus. So you're going to see the lights go out, internet maybe go down, crazy things happen. And then when the lights turn back on, the internet turns back on, whatever, the power of the world kind of comes back on, then the glory has arrived. Then the new era is now birthed and celebrations begin. And then you're going to see arrival of 45, because that's kind of like on the other side of the Red Sea already, right? So Red Sea is closed. Other side's finished. The moment in time is over. The moment in time, the Isaiah 61 moment, the day of vengeance is complete. And then on the other side of the sea, Red Sea, and the other side of that glory event, we're going to have a leader, and that's where 45 comes in to do his, to actually 45 comes back to rebuild what God took down.
Wow.
So when is this time frame here? Sometime before September, after June 6th?
It's before. The latest would be June 21, most likely before June 6 or into June 6, and very likely in the end of May time frame. So you'll see, we can go through the timelines here. If you want to scroll quickly, go to page 32, and you'll see it here on page 32. So the timelines I've laid out here, all the different cycle points, all calculate to May 14th being potentially the Red Sea moment where the Red Sea closes. Anywhere May 14th, it's 888 months from when Israel was proclaimed a state to the precise day. 8 represents Jesus. 8 represents a new beginning. 8 was how many people were on the ark when Noah stepped off into a new era. So very powerful time point, May 14th. It's also second Passover, and God acts on his Passover. So we've just completed the first Passover, heading into the second Passover. We're still expecting potentially a first strike here in April. So that will be check, and then we should see checkmate for those chess players in May, somewhere around middle to the end of May, and probably before June 6th. So all of these time points are pointing into that May 14th through June 6th time window. 40, as you know, a mother his delivery is not only 9 months, but more precisely, sometimes 40 weeks. 40 weeks is precisely June 6th.
Okay.
like to the exact day. So June 6th was D-Day. Pentecost is also June 6th. So all these things are layering in together.
Wow.
So for this powerfully, the world, I believe, is never going to forget this time window. There's going to be a day in there that's going to be historic, but no one's going to ever forget this time window, I believe.